everybody, this is Bryan Reesman with Side Jams. In our episode today, welcoming singer, rapper, philosopher, and hockey fanatic, Matisyahu.
Hello, hello.
I see you've dyed your hair. It's sort of between purple and fuchsia. I'm not quite. Or is it
Yes.
indigo?
Yeah.
Violet?
Yeah, I've been dyeing it like every few days and just messing around with different colors.
That's interesting. That's cool. Yeah, but your hair was naturally dark before.
But
And
my
it
hair
started going.
started going white when I was like 26.
My dad was premature gray. By the time he was 40, he was all gray, and I don't remember. I don't have a recollection of him before that.
Exactly, yeah. So I don't have to I get to skip the bleaching process and just my hair has no pigment, so I can have fun with it without having to get it bleached, which is kind of gross.
As long as you're having fun. I had a roommate freshman year at NYU, and he was a punk, and so he dyed his own hair. So occasionally it felt like he had multicolored roots at a certain point. He was
Yeah.
blonde, but then he went black, then he went red, then he went something else. It was
Yeah. Yeah.
different. But I was just checking out your new album, the self-titled new release, which came out a couple weeks ago
Thank you.
at this point. And it's interesting because there's a lot of atmospheric tunes on it. I mean, you're known for mixing up, obviously reggae and hip hop and pop, and this one seems very contemplative. And I know that you were married again recently, like 3 years ago, and you have two children
Yep.
with your wife. And it seems like this is an album sort of both about celebrating this sort of, I think, the soulmate in your life, but also again with a lot of the themes in your albums of sort of tracing your continual evolution as a human being.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think as the years have gone on, my lyric writing has become a little less idealistic and more like realistic or about my real life experiences. Even though a lot of the kids today they really write extremely literally, is that's kind of the thing right now. But for me,
Yeah.
it's still using lots of metaphors. Like my sons are downstairs right now recording music with another young artist, and they're writing. I'm listening in on their writing sessions and stuff, and it's so interesting because like I feel like such an old man because of like I use metaphors and all these like these kids they talk about exactly what it is that they're talking about. But yeah, there's a lot of personal. I became the music became more personal over the years, I would say. Um,
Yeah.
and less about ideas. And this record definitely continues that. And I think that musically, this record kind of leaves a lot of space for the vocals. And
Mhm.
that's something that a lot of people are kind of saying, like that they're really hearing the lyric and coming back to the lyric, which I think no matter what genre that I'm dipping into or blending, the lyric is always kind of the central thing that makes it like I guess Matisyahu one of the things. And certainly the
Yeah.
fans, the core fans, they come back to that. So they seem to be pretty happy with the album, though it is pretty
We
meditative. Yeah.
Well, but the opening track, you say you're not regular, you're not secular. I mean, obviously, there are some fans who followed you all the way through. The first thing I think of is this movie.
Oh hell yeah, nice Sam Raimi.
I like this. I like it when I saw this, like, I dig this. It's like when I didn't, I watched the last Bill and Ted movie and Kid Cudi was in there, and I didn't know much about him, but I was like, that was a great performance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He
Cuddy
shows
does
up
a
at
lot
the
of
end, like it's just, what?
yeah. Kid Cudi does a lot of acting. It's kind of cool that he pops in. He pops in all the time in movies. You're like, whoa. This was like really cool experience for me to be in a horror movie, and
And a
we
Jewish horror movie though, because it's usually Christian stuff, and
yeah,
this wasn't the Golem either. This was like the Dybbuk
yeah.
box.
Yeah. This was the first like Jewish poltergeist story, at least that we know of. It was pretty scary. It's pretty scary.
Was it you had a good time on set?
Yeah, it was awesome. I filmed it. I think in like it was somewhere around the time that I was going to Vancouver for the Olympics for the one day stuff, and
Yeah.
it was shot in Vancouver. So I remember like around that year I was like it was like my second home. I was spending a lot of time up there.
Yeah, no, I mean the new album. There's a lot. I think my favorite track actually on the new album is "Rain Dance," which is at the end, which I believe was inspired by a wilderness therapy session that you did, getting back to nature, and you felt that was a
Yes.
transformative experience. And it feels like that when you listen to it. It's very dreamy, very meditative.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so that's so cool that that's your favorite song. It's probably my favorite song on the album too. It's really powerful one.
A lot of you've talked about feeling isolated, and yet you always have this uplifting message in your music, and you also there's a lot of peace, love, and understanding. At the same time, you're a big hockey fan, and people associate that oftentimes with violence and
Yeah.
and anger. And I'm kind of curious. You started playing hockey as a kid. It goes way back.
Yes. Yeah, I started when I was a little kid. When I was like started skating when I was maybe 8 years old, and playing hockey for the Plainsmen and White Plains when I was 9. And then I
Mm.
played a bit in high school, and eventually kind of got more into music. But I've always had a love for it. And when I lived in LA, my kids were getting involved in baseball, and I was not a fan. I'm not a fan of baseball. I was never a fan of watching baseball, unfortunately.
It can be
So I was
boring. I
yeah.
played
So
it, but it can be boring to watch.
I hit up Luke Robitaille, and we got some tickets to the Kings game. We went right against the boards, and my two boys fell in love with the sport and played hockey ever since. All three of my boys.
Yeah.
And so it's yeah, I love it. I love especially like since COVID started, like having the TV on during hockey season and watching the games, going to the games. Like my boys are one of them is a hardcore Kings fan, even though I'm from New York and we live in New York in New
Of course.
Jersey. But they won two Stanley Cups during the 4 years that we were living in LA. So they're pretty big Kings fans.
It's cool. Well, and of course, being a New Yorker, Islanders, Rangers,
Yeah,
their favorite.
I've always been a Rangers fan, but I really started watching the Islanders a lot last season. They had a great team last season, and so I like all the New York teams, even the Devils. Now I'm living in New Jersey, so.
Oh, right on. So, like, do you find a different, especially with the New York teams, are a big difference in terms of way they approach things?
On the New
So I've
York
never
team.
been a huge, yeah, just in how they play. I've never been a huge sports fan. A friend of mine is like a big art fan and sports fan, and you see a lot of
Mm,
analysis. And people who aren't hardcore sports fans probably sit there and you'll roll their eyes, like, what does this all mean?
mm.
You find a difference in terms of their strategies and the way they've approached things over the years?
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, it is fun. It's fun to watch teams build, and that's been fun watching like the Islanders and the Rangers and the Devils in their process of building these teams that are really really great, and then watching when a team gets hot and how they kind of like how they just going from game to game. So it's fun. I like watching sports. There was a time when I was when I was like way more into studying all the time. And as I've gotten older, I kind of feel like there's something to be said for like watching a game and just relaxing, and also because of my involvement with my boys, so it's fun.
Well, it's also of all the sports out there, it's the most fast paced. I
Yeah,
mean, people are
it's
literally whizzing around on the ice, so it's like I can't imagine it's super relaxing because you start getting pumped up. Seems like hockey fans really get into it.
yeah. You always like you can hear like the whistles blowing. There's some kind of scuffle in front of the net. Wherever I am in the kitchen or whatever, I always turn around. What's going on? Um, So yeah, it's a fun game. It's so fast paced. It's so beautiful and graceful, and it's so hard hitting and violent at the same time. So I mean, it's a beautiful combination of things. I don't think there's any sport like it.
Is it therapeutic for you to get on the ice and kind of slam into people and do
Oh, not at
that?
all. Not anymore. I mean, now when I get on the ice, it's like it's like 2 3 minutes, and then I'm tired. I have no stamina, and I don't have those muscles anymore. But when I was a kid, it was really therapeutic. I mean, I had memories of we were on an outdoor rink, and the sun coming up, at those early morning practices, and my dad standing on the bleachers with his coffee, cup, and the steam rising up from that, and I loved being on the ice. I loved skating, and I loved hitting. And it was such a great feeling to hit people.
Coming from such a guy with this peaceful message in his music, and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I do
Well,
it.
it's like people are complex, and you can sing about peace and hope for that, and you can treat people in a peaceful way. It doesn't mean that you're not going to like ice hockey, and I think it's funny. Like a lot of times, people think one person has to be a one way the whole way. That's so boring.
Well, that's in a lot of your music. Like you're not
Yeah.
defined in any one way. And there's some people that are. I mean, like in that song "Lonely Day" on the new album, it's clear that you had an epiphany early on, whereas a lot of your peers were trying to conform, and you weren't. You kind of went the other way. And I relate to that because as a kid, I was like the honor student that liked heavy metal, horror movies, comic books, Godzilla movies, like a lot of
Yeah.
stuff that people thought was stupid.
Right.
And I was getting really high marks, but I just liked these kind of just dark and weird things to other people
Right.
or just fantasy. And I was reading too, actually. You worked on a ski mountain in Bend, Oregon, at one point. But how old were you at that time?
I was 18. 18, 19, I worked at Mount Bachelor in Bend, Oregon. It's a great mountain. I worked on the Rainbow Chairlift, which is like the old school heavy steel chairlifts that you had to slow
Oh
down,
wow.
or else it would like knock somebody out. And yeah, but yeah, it was a great time. It was such a nice time in my life because I was away from New York in a pretty small town at the time. Bend was still pretty small town, and
Yeah.
it was great for me because I did like community theater there. I got the lead role in the Equus play. I played the
Oh
boy,
wow.
and I did. They had open mic night at coffee shops that were like, small enough that I felt confident to go in there and start performing. And then they eventually gave me my own night. The place was called Cafe Paradiso, and I have
Mm.
videotapes of me and guy, doing these improvisational jams and stuff. And I had bought a motorcycle. There were the lakes in the summertime. You drive up to the mountains and go swimming. I mean, I think I was living in a garage, and I had my putting my first band together, and playing local shows and stuff. And I was like 18, 19. It was a really cool time in my life. And then
So you lived up.
yeah, go
So you
ahead.
lived up there for a couple of years,
Yeah, I was there for 2 years. Yeah.
and then so and then what was the early band like compared
The
with
early
later?
band, the name was Soul for I, and then we had a duo called the Mystical Truth, and I was MC Truth, and there was MC Mystic, and it was we were just a bunch of couple of. It was like, did you ever see like Granola Funk, like I don't know, like on Fish Tour, there were like hippies that were like beatboxing and
Okay.
rapping, and it was like that kind of thing. It was like crunchy, kind of, but it was the original like seeds of what was to become Matisyahu, because I was starting to figure out like where my identity played in and what was important to me, and I was getting a lot of time performing in front of people, getting comfortable being like on a stage.
And you did snowboarding up there too, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I think you got hurt at one point,
Oh,
probably doing some tricks or.
I got hurt. I broke my collarbone skiing when I was 16, and
Oh wow.
that was the end of my skiing because it was with a pole. So after that, I said,
Oh.
snowboarding for me, please.
So from snowboarding to rabbi exorcist. I mean, that's kind of.
It's been quite a, it's been quite a life, I have to say.
It is. It's very. It's clever. And also, I was reading because I found this old. It was this old Entertainment Weekly story that you loved playing sports growing up, but then you got a reputation for being a stoner.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
got you booted off the team, or
yeah.
how did that work? I
Pretty
mean,
much, my love was ice hockey, and I wanted to be really focused, determined hockey player, and I just kind of string of bad luck. One season I broke my collarbone. I was out. With the, um, I kind of wasn't really ready to probably like when I was that young, in middle school, ready to step up and be on a varsity team, which was what I was sort of was the goal. What it was looking like. I had to make a choice,
hmm,
and I ended up ended up playing JV, and it was less competitive, and it was less of a push, and I didn't really push myself, and that's when I started smoking weed and like listening to music. And when I did it, it was very much like it was very obvious. I became kind of a hippie, and definitely I don't think the coach was interested in having me
yeah.
on the team. I had these huge dreadlocks and would wear sandals to school in February. I was definitely on my own trip.
You think it was just part of the image, or is it really hard to get the dreadlocks under the helmet? And
Uh, no, I have videos of I had flames on the side of the helmet and dreadlocks coming down, and I'm
really,
6'4", so on skates that's like I'm like 6'8". It was a sight to see. Yeah, it was quite a sight to see.
actually, do you have like photos and videos from that era?
I do, yeah, I do. I have the White Plains. I have the White Plains High School, you know, varsity hockey picture with me with the dreadlocks. It's pretty cool.
And watching your sons get into hockey, how is it? You're obviously reliving those times, but have you, is there anything any wisdom you can pass on to them about the sport that you learned?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, I do it with hockey. And I do it with music with my older boys who are now recording music, and I do it like with just life stuff all the time. It's like kids need like my at least I find like constantly, like, not constantly, but you need to have conversations with them about your experiences. It's really important that you share, I think, as a parent, your personal experiences. And a lot of parents just shy away from that, and they feel like they have to guard their children from themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm very much like, I believe that, like, we have experiences. Kids are really smart. They know, like, what you know when parents are lying to them and when they're not. And like that whole trust thing is so important, and they feel like, there isn't, like, like it's all right there. So yeah, for sure, I talk to them all the time. My number one lesson I had to learn from myself, in the hockey rinks, is the temper. Because when you're watching hockey
Yeah.
and you watch the hockey parents and they start losing their minds, but when you see your kid get, like, smashed, like, illegally or something like that, it's really easy to lose it. So after a couple of years of watching them, I finally learned how to come watch the games and just realize, okay, this is children's hockey. We can just relax and enjoy the game. But yeah, I'm
We'll,
always trying to give them advice on stuff.
we'll see with your young son and daughter now too, to see if they follow in those footsteps
Yeah, we'll
and
see.
see what that happens. And you'll have more wisdom at that point, hopefully.
Yeah, let's hope.
Well, I remember I played Little League for 3 seasons. Speaking of baseball, like we were talking about earlier, and I remember once after a game we'd beaten this other team, and this kid said, "Oh, you guys are a bunch of cheaters," and my friend's dad got really pissed off. Said, "Hey," and he came over and he gave him a lecture about sportsmanship.
Yeah,
And these days, I feel like we have a problem with sportsmanship in some
yeah,
cases in
yeah,
society now. And on top of that, you can't say anything to anybody else's kid, even if
yeah,
they've actually done something bad that, you can talk to someone else's kid and say, that's not a good idea.
yeah.
you know, don't
No, I
light that
think
thing on fire.
yeah, no, I think it's totally fine to do that. I've had actually, like, times where a parent, I've started giving speeches, and other parents have come over and been like, wow, like, that was really cool. Like, that kids need to hear that stuff about just, like, making eye contact with the people at the rink and shaking people's hands and saying hello and being like human beings. You know what I mean?
We live in a weird digital world now.
Yeah,
I mean, really, it's like, and that's what's interesting about, rain dancing. We have this world that we're more connected and we're more disconnected at the same time. It was interesting. I just read that you had played a benefit for Ukraine last month at City Winery, and I believe your great grandmother was Ukrainian.
hmm from
So
Odessa.
you have so you have a connection to that too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And it makes me think of the video for Jerusalem because you had that people putting up photos up on that wall of light, and in some cases you automatically think of a memorial given a tragedy, but it was an interesting mixture of how you were showing all the diverse types of people we have in the world, and at the same time empathizing with the pain of different groups. It was
Absolutely.
interesting juxtaposition that you had there.
Oh, thank you.
And as I was thinking, also, you combined religion and hockey together in the miracle video.
Yeah.
So, was you have that Roman emperor who like imprisons you and this black gladiator in a cage, and you guys get out, and he sends his hockey minions after you?
Yeah, that was. I've had a couple of video treatments that I wrote, and that was one of them. And it was like, I had very specific things that I wanted. I wanted Matisyahu ice capades on LSD, basically, and and I was like, it has to include the young blood scene, where the guy does the skates. The movie Young Blood. I don't know if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
ever
yeah.
saw it with Rob Lowe. I'm like, I want a young blood scene. We need a Zamboni in the video. OG, it's such a cool video. I love that to this day. It's such a fun video. But yeah, it's all about, like, she's like, in my life, different interesting things coming together, and, like, to me, that's what's beautiful. I mean, you take, like, being Hasidic and then reggae music, those two things which seemingly are so separate, and then you find this link, this, like, real authentic place where you can combine them. I think my father once told me about this time when I ride motorcycles, Harley also, and
Yeah.
me and my dad were on a little motorcycle trip, and we were at some motel somewhere, and it was all lined with motorcycles. Everyone was sleeping there along the road, and everyone was, like, revving up their engines in the morning, and you hear, like, these Harleys, and over the top of the Harleys, I had started hanging out with these Hasidim that pray really, really loud, like they scream. It's like screaming at God, basically. And
Mm.
I was praying that way, and so you could hear all the Harleys, and then you could hear over the top of it, Shema Israel, like. And he thought it was one of the coolest. He's atheist, but he thought it was one of the coolest, religious moments he ever saw,
Sounds
heard.
kind of metal, actually.
Yeah.
Well, so you've been riding motorcycles your whole adult life, or did you start when you were a teenager?
Yeah, well, I think when I was about 18, I got my first bike. Yeah,
What was your
yeah.
first bike?
My first bike was it was a Yamaha Seika, which was like it was like a but it was like I think it was like an 82. So it had this huge gray fairing on the front that was like super heavy and made it sort of difficult to maneuver. But yeah, that was the first bike. My second bike I got when I moved back to New York City in a famous bike shop in Williamsburg, no longer there. A guy named Slick that used to sell Japanese bikes right in now where there's skyscrapers in
Yeah.
Williamsburg. But and that bike I sold back to him, and um who bought it ended up buying that bike was one of the members of the Office. One I forgot his name. One of the well-known comedians. Um, and we have a joint friend, and he took a picture of himself on the bike. He said, "Look, I have Modest's bike now." So that was the guy who plays Andy on The Office.
It was Ed Helms.
Ed Helms. Yeah, Ed Helms. Ed Helms
Yeah.
has it's like a yellow motorcycle. Like it looks like the motorcycle from like the original Jimmy Cliff Harder They Fall. You know
Okay.
that it's pretty cool. And then the next bike I had, I bought my father's Harley off of him, and he
Hmm.
bought himself a new bike, and that was a great bike. And we went on a road trip together, and I was starting to make some money, and the clutch went out, and I was like, like I couldn't stop the
Oh.
bike, or else I couldn't start it. So I was going through like traffic lights, trying to get to this Harley dealership, and I ended up buying a new bike at that dealership because they couldn't replace the clutch, and I didn't want to end the trip. And then over time, I've had different bikes. The one I have now is a shovelhead that was built for me by a good friend of mine from my time back in Oregon. Yeah.
What was the most fun ride you ever took?
Um, Most fun ride. I was just my dad was here a couple days ago and we were talking about like trips that we've taken together, and we
Hmm.
were talking about all the crazy experiences we've had. Like, we had a lot of fun, but the moments that we remember are when you're like, riding behind a semi on the highway to shield the rain, going 80 miles an hour, or like we've
Oh,
had these
geez.
crazy experiences where it's beautiful and then you go up to the mountains and there's snow all over the road. Yeah, there's been a few.
The thing with semis, you have to be careful because like they can't see you. I remember once I almost got run off the road in Connecticut because I was kind of going up this mountainside and there's a lane. They have that really quick lane merge, and it's like I was almost like it was like I had to I just swerved and got between him and the car behind him.
Oh,
You
cool.
know,
Wow. It's nuts.
and
Yeah.
yeah, with cars, I imagine with bikes, it's actually very tricky.
Yeah, my first trip that I took, um my first gig that I ever had, like where I got paid money for doing music, it was like through the Detroit Auto Show and Volkswagen, and I performed at the
Huh.
Detroit Auto Show while I was in college, before I was Matisyahu, or before I had really become religious in any way.
Yeah.
And I took that money, I bought myself a little Kawasaki, and I drove that from New York to Minneapolis because it was like I had a friend who was a producer there who would help me make a demo. And it was like, today it's like everyone's can make a demo like in their living room with the most
Yep.
basic stuff. But then it was like, okay, I've got a friend, and I took this journey, and I decided to go like what I thought were back roads through Canada. It was the most ridiculous way of going. Um, that was an insane trip. But
Speaking of dangerous, did you ever have any big hockey injuries?
yeah, I tore my ACL. I like kind of totally, and my MCL, like my whole meniscus, my knee.
Yeah.
I was playing like men's league hockey at Chelsea Piers,
Hmm.
and I guess I was in my mid 30s or early 30s or something, and I just felt someone fell on top of me and just psh, yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever played like street hockey or deck hockey?
Mm, Street hockey, yeah, like roller hockey growing up as a kid and stuff, like on rollerblades for sure.
And how is that different? I mean, obviously it's you're still gliding across the surface, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah, it's a different motion. I think it's gotten closer and closer over the years. the materials have gotten like better, but basically you're talking about rubber on pavement versus metal on ice. So the whole feel is a completely different feel, but it is generally the same idea, you know. And for kids like, you know, growing up in New York and stuff, like we don't have access to rinks all the time, or even like programs all the time. So street hockey and roller hockey is like a huge part of it all.
Like composite sticks or wooden sticks?
Oh, composite. Yeah, I don't think wooden sticks anymore. I don't think they use them anymore.
They're sturdier in general.
I think they use for street hockey. They use the composite. I don't know if they use wood sticks, but the sticks now are so light. It's insane. They're crazy, crazy
Now, in the
light.
past, when you were on tour, did you actually go skating or play hockey while you were on tour? Or
Yep,
was that a no
I'm
no?
I'm gonna have to get you some pictures of that too. Like I would set up the hockey nets. We would play roller hockey. We went so far as I went so far as to have a custom trailer built with a whole thing for a motorcycle to like ramp the motorcycle in. So I had my Harley out on the road with me for years and years. You know, while I was touring and stuff too.
That's cool. And then what as far like any as hockey as well? Like you would play.
Oh yeah, like I would play with my sons because I had my sons out on tour with me all the time as well, and I would have the hockey nets set up every day. The rollerblades would be out and the sticks, and we would just be shooting around wherever the tour bus was parked up, whether it was a parking lot in like a big amphitheater or whether we were like on some side street in Pittsburgh. You know, we would find places to take slap shots and stuff.
Would your manager be like, no, 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 you can't do that on tour?
Well, no, I mean, yeah, usually there was a tour manager at some point that was like, "What are you guys doing?" You know.
It's a little tricky. Well, at least you know it's good. I mean, it sounds like you just try to have a well-rounded life. I mean, it's important, I think, to have other things. I mean, I've had people tell me. I was talking with Ben from Asking Alexandria, and he said in the beginning of the pandemic he learned how to cook because he realized that his hobby became his passion became his just career.
Oh
And I
wow,
feel that as a writer, like you know, all the things I love became my career. So what do I do outside of that
yeah.
to find the thing? And I guess it's a good refuge for you also because of all the stuff you're doing.
It's totally true. It's totally true what you're saying. It's when your main passion, your main hobby becomes your not only your way of making finances, it becomes your whole entire life. You know, and it's an incredible blessing. That's what everybody wants to be able to be surrounded by doing the thing they love all the time. But it's also there's a side of it that a lot of people don't know about or don't talk about, and it's it takes that away from you. Yeah, and then you become kind of like you find these other little hobbies, these little things that make your life complete, and those are the things that kind of make you part of the things that make your life complete. You know, for sure.
But you know, I had a couple other quick hockey questions, which was well, first of all, favorite team,
Favorite team is the Rangers, New York Rangers.
and who you think's going to win the Stanley Cup this year?
The New York Rangers are going to win the Stanley Cup this year. There's no question. They're actually doing really well. I think we have a shot at it.
Is there any one position that you tended to play?
I played everything. I played left wing mainly. I'm a lefty, and I played center a little bit. But I really love defense, and I played defense and for a couple of years, and it's just such a fun position. And I have a certain appreciation for that position. I'd say
What's the hardest position to play? You think?
well, that's tough. That's a tough one. I don't know if you can say it's hard being on the ice. Five guys on the ice. You know what I mean? Rotating all the time, so everyone's getting fresh legs. It's not like in basketball where you have like your starting five or whatever is pretty much
Yeah.
in for the game. It's such a team sport, you know, and there's also a culture of humility that you find in the sport, which you don't find in a lot of sports today. Um, but there's a culture of like of team mentality, you know. So I appreciate that as well. I like that.
Which is interesting, given that it can be one of the more violent sports
Yeah,
with some people.
yeah. The thing with the violence is this: like in some sports, you might see like a fight start to happen. It's so out of the box and it's so abnormal for the sport, and you know that it's just like, well, what is this? You know, this is just rage. This is just. But you have to remember with hockey that these guys are so tough. You know, they're getting like punched in the face, hit with hockey pucks and stuff, and bouncing back. It's just part of the thing. And then there's this whole culture to like protecting your players on the ice and not being intimidated and not and that's all part of the understanding and the mentality that everyone who's playing hockey and a lot of the hockey people that are watching hockey have. So when there's a fight, it's not like that the end of the world. First of all, rarely is anyone getting injured, and I mean it happens, but it's not serious injuries. And then you'll see the guys like laughing about it as they're on their way to the penalty box, with each other, the guys they just fought, and it's sort
Yeah.
of it's just a part of the thing. It's not so crazy, really. I don't
How did
think.
how did that prepare you for life on the road? The life of a
Well,
rock star.
mm,
Dealing with
I'm when
hecklers and dealing with weird situations and everything. Like,
Well, when it comes to that, like I don't think that hockey prepared me for that. I'm a pretty sensitive type, and where I really got prepared, well, not prepared, but where I learned how to grow thick skin was my time in Crown Heights in Brooklyn, in the religious community, because in that
huh?
community there's no boundaries whatsoever, and it's very in your face, and everything is very crowded, and I was kind of living in that community, so people will say whatever they want to you. They'll ask you for whatever they want. There's no sense of is this a good time or a bad time, or maybe we shouldn't come to his house, or how call him on his cell phone. There's no limitations at all. So that was kind of where I guess the place where I had to learn as I started touring, and I had to learn how to be a little less sensitive, and when it comes to people and the way people are, and that just this is the way people are,
Yeah. Is there any? I guess lastly, is there any big life lesson that you've learned that you can impart to younger people after this kind of wild ride you've been on so far?
Yeah, there's so many lessons, and I'm learning them every day, and trying to teach them to my kids every day. Where to start? Where do you start with that, I guess the main thing is, I guess one thing like that, like I was talking with my younger son, is about like recently, is about like action. And sometimes like certain people, like we have like a lot of hunger and a lot of desire and big dreams,
Yeah.
and like, you know it has to start with you, basically like working at something and becoming good at it, it's like very basic, but like, so for some people it's the life is all out here, and it's not like in here in the details of doing. And
Yeah.
that was a lesson that has taken me a long time to learn, and one that was recently trying to impart onto my 11-year-old. That it doesn't matter so much what people think at the end of the day, or who thinks what, or who you convince of what. But at the end of the day, your security comes from your sense of what you actually do, what you actually are able to do, and that takes work, and it's tedious, and a step at a time, that type of thing.
Work in progress.
Yeah, man.
All right. Well, Mattis, thank you again. It was great to chat. Hopefully, we'll chat again at some point soon.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.